Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our August Talk to Me Tuesday. Hopefully, everybody has the opportunity to come on and come into the room. If you can, in the comments, drop your city and your profession. We would love to know who we have watching us today. Our topic today is prioritizing employee mental health and wellness and how HR departments can make a difference in that process. So, as always, you have myself and Chantrice. I am Simone with the Nomis Consulting Group. Chantrice, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. For those of you who have watched us in the past, thank you for coming back. And for those who are just joining us, yes, my name is Chantrice, and I am the CEO and founder of Think Sharp LLC. So, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for coming. Like Chantrice said, thank you for coming back. We have a special guest today, as this is again diving into the mental health and wellness and how it relates in the workplace. So we have Miss Lamisha Lipscomb with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I look forward to this great discussion.
Absolutely. So, again, we want to welcome everybody as we discuss this crucial topic of employee mental health and wellness in the workplace and how the HR departments and HR practitioners can assist companies in cultivating a culture that acknowledges and welcomes this topic. So, we have a poll question for you guys to start us off. And this one is about awareness. Do you believe that mental health is adequately addressed and prioritized in your organization? In the comments, you can drop one, two, or three. Let us know your answer. Yes, it is the top priority. Partially, there are some things, some focus on it, or no, it's not given enough attention at all. And as we go through these polls questions throughout the top conversation today, we'll give everybody about 30 seconds to respond, and then we'll take those answers and dive into our talking points. Okay, we see some comments coming in. All right, so we're going to go with partially. There is some focus on it, and that makes sense. I think right now where we are with diversity and inclusion and equity, we are seeing companies give some focus in some areas, but then we have some companies that are not doing enough at all when it comes to adding wellness days and things like that. So let's understanding this, the importance of mental health as we dive into our first talking point. We can be finished with this first poll question. I think as we discuss the importance of mental health, and Chantrice and Miss Lamisha, I'll ask you guys to jump in where you see fit, understanding that wellness days need to be added because it's not your typical PTO. We know we put in vacation time to go to the doctors, take our kids or family members to different appointments, but sometimes with everything that's going on from a work and professional perspective, personal perspective, you wake up some mornings and you need a day. You need a mental day. You need to be able to take that break. And I see in my career and in just in the corporate industry that a lot of people are nervous to say that. They're more willing to call in sick when that's not necessarily the case, because me saying I need a wellness day or a mental day is not necessarily accepted in their place of employment. Have either of you experienced this from either side, from being in a managerial perspective and having to address that with an employee, or even as an employee yourself?
I would say, as an employee, I have seen throughout my career, one company in particular did foster this type of environment where they did offer mental health days.
Okay.
But I think it's still one of those things where employees are just unsure on how to have that conversation. It's still hard.
Right.
You're talking about needing a break from work just to have a day, like you said. But, what does that look like for employers who don't offer that? It's just PTO. You're just asking for a vacation day. You're just asking for a day to go to the doctor. You're not really having that tough conversation because that environment is not supported. It's not, your employer isn't actively talking about mental health in the workplace. So it's just so important just to go back to managers and leaders of the organizations and even partnering with HR to have those difficult conversations to make sure you're open and you're saying, this is how we support mental health in our environment. That way employees feel more comfortable coming to you and coming forward, asking for those days off.
Right. Agreed. Miss Lamisha, as a mental health advocate, what would you say is the most significant impact of prioritizing mental health and wellness in the workplace?
Well, studies have shown that, actually, when you do provide mental health and establish that environment, you get a better product out of your employees, right? So, with you, Miss Centuries, over the years that has not been a priority. But I will say that there have been, people are coming along, which is so important to recognize the importance of mental health because we have life, right? And life brings challenges outside of our work environment. And unfortunately, sometimes you just can't separate the two.
Yes.
So, understanding the importance of mental health and understanding the importance of stress relief, right?
Yeah.
Understanding the importance of empathy, right? That
Yeah.
begins to open up that door for others to feel more comfortable. It opens up I don't want to say a family environment, but it does in
Yeah.
some sense because when you feel like you're understood and you are appreciated, then you are more likely to then go the extra mile. And for some people, work is an escape. I'm not sure if you guys have heard that sometimes work is an escape from home. So
Right.
yes, it's very important. I do believe that they are making efforts towards that, which is very important.
Absolutely. And prior to us diving into the second topic, I do want to add, I agree with you said, Miss Lamisha, and when empathy is applied, especially in companies that have gone the mile to have these DEI programs, there should be an initiative that aligns with that program that creates a open, safe, transparent medium to incorporate wellness. I shouldn't have to sit in front of you and cry and vent about my scenario in order for you to show empathy that I do need this type of mental break. And I think that's what makes some employers very hesitant to bring up the topic of a mental day. I just
Right.
tell you I'm sick, so I don't have to deal with the severity of the conversation because I may not want to necessarily share what it is that I'm experiencing, but there has not been a safe uh, line of communication to where the DEI program has already established this. They've had the hard conversation with upper management to where
Mhm.
we've incorporated this. And yes, you get, maybe one a quarter, one a month. I mean, we know stress hits everyone differently. So some may can go once a quarter with one wellness day. And for some, it may be a little bit more, but there should be a gap in between a regular and when accommodations come into place. And that is where I think that conversation really needs to start. But as we dive into the second question, we'll get our second poll question up. This one is stigma and culture. Has your organization created a culture that encourages open dialogue and support around mental health, which is kind of where we was just coming from? So drop your comments, drop your answers in the comment section for us. Number one is yes, there is a strong culture of support. Number two, partially. There are some efforts, but more can be done. And then number three, no, there is still stigma and lack of support on this topic. And then Chantrice, you'll take us from here.
Absolutely. So we're giving about 30 seconds to
I
answer the question.
give them about 30. Okay, that's good.
So one and two. That is pretty good.
Right. I like that. That might be, I would like to know what work environment, what industry you were possibly in, because I know sometimes some industries have the ability to apply way more than some others. Okay, we have another one as well. So let's roll with those two.
So I think, Simone, what do you think are some strategies that we can do to increase awareness and understanding of mental health issues among employees and managers?
From an HR perspective, for me, I think again that like kind of what we were just talking about is keeping that the transparency and making it be a safe space, a safe topic. I shouldn't
Yeah.
feel threatened that I'm going to be discriminated against or treated differently because I've addressed that. Sometimes I have days where I struggle with my stress levels. I think the term mental health has so much stigma behind it as it is that If I say, oh, Miss Chantrice, I need to come in your office just to discuss my mental health, I don't know if your interpretation of that is my managing of my stress, or okay, it's the person sitting in front of me schizophrenic or bipolar, or are they struggling with something? And because that term is interchangeably used so much, I think the stigma is there outside of just sometimes. I mean, I woke up today, I may be having relationship problems, the kids may be doing the most right now, bills are due, things are stressful, and I'm having one of those back against the wall, trying not
Right.
to have a breakdown, where most people just have to do that in the car on the way to work or
Right.
on their lunch break. But having that safe space of transparency in my communication with the HR department or whoever my senior, leader is, that hey, but if there's a policy that has been created with the DEI program, with
Mhm.
HR, to where again, I don't feel like I have to provide a detailed explanation of what I'm struggling with today, but I know I have an option that they've already put forth the effort to create this policy. It goes right along with your attendance policy. I know I can call. I have, at least one day I can use. Yes, you have to be mindful of how you tend to use it so that it's not abused. And I think companies have to look at it from both perspectives. Not, oh, I'm just adding another paid day to an employee. But, like what Miss Lamisha said on the last talking point, when you feel appreciated and understood in your environment, it reflects in your product and in your work ethic. If I know I can take today, I really need it. Tomorrow when I come in, I'm getting it done. I'm making sure I'm on my, my to-do list is being taken care of. I'm meeting my deadlines because I value this place, because I know this place values me.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I'm curious, Lamisha, from your standpoint, how have you seen organizations combat the stigma associated with mental health and create a more inclusive environment for their employees?
So some of the things that I've noticed is, well, let me just say first, to address Ms. Simone, one of the things that's important about stigma is understanding. And so education is so important in understanding that mental
Absolutely.
health is not just schizophrenia or bipolar or depression, right? Understanding that depression can be seasonal, depression can be situational, and then it can definitely be hereditary, right? A chemical thing that happens in the brain. So education is so important. But some of the things that I've noticed within companies, their May is Mental Health Month, and some companies have begun to participate and encourage their employees to participate. They raise money. There's a program called NAMI, and this is a big organization. It's around the world, and it promotes mental health. It provides support for families, actually, of families that have family members that struggle with mental health. So taking some of these initiatives have helped. Some of the things that also people have incorporated is adding behavioral health to insurance plans, right?
Hmm.
Other initiatives have been, placing things around the office. If you're actually in an office, placing little flyers or
Absolutely.
advertisements about mental health and what it looks like, and encouraging you to make that phone call. Some companies have included the suicide hotline information on
Right.
their walls, right? So those type of things are initiatives that others have taken, and I think just discussing it, even establishing programs like some companies have that I know of have actually not only encouraged their employees to participate in NAMI when they have their annual walk, but they also just have other little programs established, whether it's establishing their own walking program to add to NAMI. So just and branching out from NAMI. So those are some of the great programs and things and initiatives that I've seen other companies establish and take on, which is great. I could actually say with mental health, when behavioral health was added to insurances, you would only get like a couple of visits. Now they've seemed to add more to that,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
More times that or frequencies that you can include in mental health. Um, and they're more considering it more as a holistic perspective. And
Mhm.
that's the insurances are, and that's the importance that we must stress to companies, understanding that our mental health is just as important as our physical health. Like our bodies, like if you look at your hand, everything is connected, right? And the same thing is going on with our mental health. Our mental health is connected to our physical health and vice versa. And they just connect. And if one is off, then the other is definitely going to be off.
Right. And I agree. Not me, that's my first time hearing of that, but I do know Talkspace is a big one that is out right now where companies are really pushing and integrating it into the benefits programs or into their wellness program, where even it's very similar to BetterHelp,
Better
where
have.
you
Mm-hmm.
can, it's an app,
Mhm.
it's on your
Mm-hmm.
phone, you can chat the
Virtual.
particular person that's helping you, or you can do the virtual calls. And this could be something that is as easy as I need to do this on my lunch break today,
Mm-hmm.
on the ride home from work, or anything that still creates again a safe space to talk about it, to vent about it. And it could be just as a mental balance, a work life balance. It doesn't always have to be in crisis that you offer these scenarios to your staff, but just to keep a good, healthy work life balance when it comes to certain things. I have seen a lot of companies integrating that. It may be getting a little more push, I think, than some of the DEI initiatives I've seen lately are kind of dropping off. But the mental health, you see the commercials more. It's getting more awareness, I
Mm-hmm.
think, right now, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Ms. Simone, for mentioning that. Yes, we have the places like BetterHelp, Talkspace. There are even programs that are actually like Alma, and they actually start the process of getting therapists on these insurance panels,
No,
right?
yeah.
And then starting that process. So they are making strides towards and understanding mental health, which is so important. Hmm.
Absolutely.
I agree. Okay, let's get our third poll question up prior to jumping in. So, HR initiatives. Which mental health initiatives do you believe are most effective in supporting employee well being in the workplace? Flexible work arrangements, mental health benefits and resources, training and education on mental health. Or if there's another one that you think is relevant, drop that in the comments for us as well. I think this kind of they're coming in hot right behind how our conversation is transitioning. But I definitely agree. And we were just diving into number two as far as the additional resources and benefits. But I think on that first question, we were kind of talking about the education, and the education is necessary and the training to alleviate the stigma. If you offer the service, but you're not providing any education or just acknowledgement. Sometimes it's if the owner or CEO or leadership expresses in a large company way that they have done some training and some education on a topic, it makes the conversation a little easier. Again, empathy can come into play. I know that you've acknowledged that this is serious and you're not just offering it as a pacifier because it's the thing that companies are doing. I see in the comments, number two is definitely the one that was coming up for everybody. And I agree. I mean, I'm all for flexible schedules. That's going to always be at the top of my list.
It
I feel like that comes up in every live that we do. But
does. Yeah, it's good.
benefits because some people just don't have the resources. And if I could need this but I don't have the resources, maybe I'm just not aware. It could be the financial side of it, or just again not being made aware that these platforms are available to me and that they are so user friendly to where the stigma in communities is there as well, to where you may not want to go to an office physically and sit down in front of somebody, but we do everything from our phones. So just chatting, I might not even do a face to face, but having that outside ear, that also comes with professional and licensed advice, could be very beneficial. So diving into our third talking point. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Miss Lamisha.
No, I was just saying I totally agree with everything you were just sharing. So important.
Gotcha. So, implementing health policies and initiatives in the workplace environment. I think this just piggybacks on what we've been talking about as far as n- companies and departments understanding where to start. Where to start, I think, is the biggest place. Once they can get past that hump and acknowledge, okay, it is very broad. There are 1,000 things that we should do, but as a business, yes, you have to decide what is going to be our stance, what's
Hmm.
going to be our niche, and how are we going to address it. This can start with feedback. I always recommend that HR departments poll your staff, see what they need, understand
Mhm.
what your particular staff is experiencing. What you see Google doing may not work for your environment, for your industry, and for your workforce. So you need to understand the needs of your staff so that you can implement policies and procedures that benefit them. Flexible work arrangements was not one of the questions. No one put that answer in the chat. But if I'm thinking of self and I'm like, okay, well, for mental health and wellness, we're going to just give everybody a Friday off. That may not solve the problem for my staff if polling them, they say, no, I need the benefit, I need the resource. So knowing and having that information gives the HR department what they need to help build and curate a policy to present to higher level management or CEOs or whomever makes those decisions. And then you can kind of, this will work, pro and con it, and see what works. Let's try this out for this, calendar year. And then let's poll our staff midway through. Let's poll our staff at the end. How many people really use the resource? Okay. Should we put the initiatives and funding in that direction? Or should we address one of the other things that came up on the list because maybe they don't need that as much as we thought, but they need some of these other things. So, Chantrice, I wanted to ask you, when you sat in a HR role, I know that it's been some time since you were there, but
Yeah.
implementing those policies, how difficult from an HR perspective do you think it was when taking them to upper management?
You have to have buy-in from upper management, right? Nothing runs smoothly unless you get some buy-in from them and make sure they're also invested. So I think it's building a case for HR. That's always what it is when you want to implement something new. If you see that what you're currently doing isn't working, what do you need to do to get to the point to where, you're implementing some policy or some procedure that does work? And like you said, getting that buy-in from not only employees but also upper management is so very important. So polling your employees, but also talking to your leadership and asking them, come to them, of course, with some options and ask, what do you think about implementing XYZ, and how do you think, that it'll go over across the organization, but also providing your professional experience in HR. It has to go, both ways. It has to be that conversation between both sides.
I agree. Buy-in is, I think, from most employees' perspective, they don't see the work the HR personnel has to do to get that buy-in. And like you said, building the case, it starts there. It starts with us um,
Absolutely.
applying all those necessary steps to present why this new policy should even be taken into consideration or added to what we have going on. And sometimes, it can be discouraging from an HR practitioner's perspective if you can't get the buy-in. I'm
Right.
presenting the facts. I'm presenting the statistics. I'm showing you, you can see what's happening in the world right now, but sometimes you still can't get that buy-in. So then being able to go back to the drawing board and still try to find something to create a positive culture around the topic, it can get hard and challenging. So it's not always, oh, my DEI program doesn't do anything. They could have a lot of cases built, but
Yeah.
without that buy-in, you can't see the action.
Nope. It goes
It
nowhere.
can be very unfortunate sometimes when it takes longer to get the buy-in or, missing it altogether. Miss Lamisha, what are some things that you feel like organizations can do to combat that stigma and to get the buy-in? What can, if you had to give us HR practitioners or even employees that want to participate in some of these programs, some starting points of things that you think would actually help that we could try to build a case with?
Sure. And I think that's a great question. I think I agree with both of you ladies, right? I would say having a team effort, getting those who are aware of what mental health looks like, right? To actually bring a group of people together to have a conversation to take to HR, right? I think that will be a great idea. Also, education is so important when understanding stigma, when understanding what's going on. Research is good to have. Bringing something to the table when you do go to the table, understanding, hey, this is what
Right.
the suicidal rate looks like in employees and employers, and some jobs, believe it or not, there are higher ratings of suicide, or there's a higher rate of layoff. I mean, people quitting because of that type of job that they have. And so, having your facts, bringing those facts to the table, creating a team, making this a team effort when you go for to HR, right? Actually putting someone in HR who understands what mental health looks like, right? Someone with that
Right.
background that can bring that into the conversation and helping others to understand what it's like. Um, so researching why is it that my people, I can't keep people on my job, on the job, or people seem to be unhappy, bringing all of those things, all of those initiatives to the table. Again, educating, putting flyers in the office, helping people understand, talking about it, taking time like you're doing now, talking about it, not being afraid of the subject, bringing it when you bring it to the table, right?
Hmm.
Bringing those facts. Again, advertising is so important, right? Bringing advertisement to the company, talking about it yourself,
Right.
understanding that this is a human condition, just like diabetes is a human condition, mental health is a human. And you don't always have to use the word mental health. I would say
Right.
anxiety. I would use words like anxiety, words
Yeah.
like stress. So when you're advertising these things, when you're a social media putting it on your page, when you're talking about employees, offering it as a this is a benefit that we have. We address mental health. So making sure you're including that in your advertisement of your company, including it in your conversation when they're the when you know when everybody gets hired, we go through the orientation process.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Include that in your orientation process,
Right.
making it known, highlighting it, letting everyone know it's okay. Just like it's okay that you, not that it's literally okay, but normalizing it. Just like you can have diabetes, you can struggle with depression because of stress, right?
Right.
You can struggle with anxiety because of stress. So using those smaller terms when you're trying to educate and relating and being able to relate it back to something that people can understand other than mental health. I understand stress. I understand anxiety. I understand disappointment. I understand all of these things. So using words in that context as well when you are presenting it to people in the company, right? You want to make it where it is understandable, right? So that it can be acceptable, so that we can chew it and swallow it and understand that it's not this big overall arching mental health, because most people associate mental health with schizophrenia, with
Right.
bipolar,
Hmm.
and they make it scary, right? And it's not scary. And most people understanding that most people who struggle with these diagnoses won't be in your place of employment anyway. It will be the people that we would consider as normal, that are in the normal society, who are dealing with COVID, who's dealing with loss of family members, who are dealing with unemployment, right? The cost of living going out of the roof, right? So helping them to understand it's the normal people that struggle with what mental health looks like.
Right. I agree. I definitely think, like you were saying, just how we have the stigma with the mental health and versus the wellness. We're looking for the wellness side of things. Just like I know maybe like 5 to 10 years ago, every every company, every big insurance company where, if you get 10 of your employees to go to the gym a month, you're getting discounts on premiums. They put so much work and initiative into the obesity levels in the United States that you saw it everywhere. I
Mm-hmm.
know you got free memberships through your employer,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Hmm.
if they would see how many times you went. It came with different bonuses and
Mm-hmm.
initiatives because they wanted people to lose weight. It was a priority. They pushed it and they pushed it and they made it a wellness thing. It wasn't you're fat and you need to go because if you don't, something bad will happen. Your health
Mm-hmm.
will decline. It was we want to see everybody in the best version of themselves. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that we need to apply that same
Yes.
marketing tactic from a
Yes.
mental wellness perspective. Because again, it doesn't have to be a crisis for you
Right.
to be balanced and to keep that have a checks and balance on where you want to be with your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
um so I just wanted to add that little 2 cents in because
Yes,
I
I agree.
the
Mm-hmm.
wellness side of it is not promoted the same way the exercise wellness
Mm-hmm.
initiatives went out, a few
Mm-hmm.
years back. So as we transition into our next topic, let's get our next poll question up. Manager support. How supported do you feel by your managers and teams in terms of your mental health and well-being? Very supported, moderately supported, or not supported enough? Let's see what our viewers think on that. And I think this is a very important one, Chantrice, and I'll let you dive after this. But I think this is a very important one because managers sometimes cannot be trained to be good managers. So if I know that this particular manager already presents this energy, this attitude, these emotions that we gather, I go to work and I don't even care for her, she don't care for me. I'm not coming to you with this because I'm not going to feel supported. I don't even feel comfortable having the conversation because of your managerial skills when it comes to other things in the workplace, let alone something personal for myself. So I definitely think, in HR building cases, this is one of those that I is normally at the top of my list is how well are your managers trained to support these? I mean, I've have had in the past where an employee has come to me, come to the HR department, and I want to talk to my manager about this. Maybe we could readdress my workloads on particular days, but I don't feel comfortable because I've heard comments about this topic before in the break room, or they joke about certain things. So, when your managers lack particular training, not just in this topic, but overall, because sometimes people are in places for a while, they move up, but they don't necessarily get the continuous education that needs to come with those promotions and those increases, that you can create an environment where again your staff is hesitant, they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel supported. But that was my 2 cents. I'm sorry, Chantrice.
No, you're okay. No, I just to piggyback off what you were saying, just managers not having the training to actually have these difficult conversations. That's what it comes down to, just effective communication. How can you teach your managers how to be open
Mhm.
and be able to at least listen? You don't necessarily have to do all the talking. They're
Right,
coming to you because they want you to listen. And
right,
so from there, you kind of build a case in your mind as a manager. I'm sitting there like, okay, they're telling me that, I'm giving them too much work, or that, they're having a difficult time at home. Just download all that information and then work with HR. If you don't feel comfortable navigating next steps, that's what HR is there for.
right.
So I don't feel like you have to, don't, as a manager, you shouldn't feel backed against the wall like, okay, I'm just going to shut down and not do anything because that employee came to you for support.
Right.
So the best thing you can do is try to offer, certain pathways, whether it's working with HR, or whether it's saying, hey, we have this really great benefits program. I'm not sure if you're aware, but
Mhm.
just listing out those resources that are already in place. And if there's not any in place, then at least taking that information from those employees that you're speaking with, that feedback, and building a case and working with HR to see what else can be done in order to implement those things in the workplace, I think is crucial
It is. It's
right now.
extremely crucial. And it doesn't always have to be, from an employee perspective, I'm going to HR because I don't want this manager here anymore, trying to get someone
Right.
out of their job, or to be in a disciplinary role. But sometimes people just need the exposure and the education. We're all human. So you may have an employee that comes in and they're like, this is that and the third, but in your head, you're like, I got 10 times more than that going on. So if I'm managing, you should be managing. Why am I making any accommodations for you? But
Right.
everyone doesn't handle and process the same. Some of us have the ability to compartmentalize and deal with the things that are happening as they're transpiring. And then some people take all that in, take it a little more to the heart, and it impacts how they're working. I need to know where you are mentally, because if it's going to impact my end product of what I need from you at
Mhm.
work, we need to talk about it, because I don't want you to give me less than the expectation when it comes to what your deliverables are for work. So if it's now I do believe in communication and being prompt about things, not the
Right.
day is due. I don't want you to say, hey, da 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 da. Like, you have to take the accountability as the person coming, to have the discussion, that, I foresee this is a tight timeline. And based off of the other things that I have on my plate that I'm trying to balance and manage, is it possible for Chantrice to be able to pull in and we can team on some of these tasks, or do we have anyone that I can download a little bit of what I know about the topic or the project so that they can kind of help me with some deliverables. Being comfortable enough and being strong enough in your communication and how you present your case when you're trying to get that support, I think is also equally important. Because if it's just, I can't do this, it's too much for me, you
Shutting
don't
down.
there, yeah, your manager may not necessarily support you in the way that they can. But if you present your case in a manner that makes them feel like, okay, I can relate. I may not, it may not be how I would handle it, but I can relate, and let me at least see what we can work through. And then in a timely fashion, I can tell you, okay, yes, we can pull Chantrice in for a little bit. She can assist you on this. This isn't something, we can do on every project, because Chantrice has her own workload as well. However, or, sometimes, I mean, I was that manager that, okay, well, I'll help you, that's fine. Let me look at my plate. I may or may, but I have more than one plate anyway. So let's just put it over here and we'll get it done. But again, it starts with that communication and being able to get the buy-in from the person that you're pleading your case to. I think we had a question for Miss Lamisha. I know I've been talking over.
No. I was listening. I was just going to say, I think you guys have covered it. Creating an atmosphere with your managers of education. One of the things that you do when you're being trained in HR, you talk about the importance of what sexual harassment looks like. What it looks like to discriminate against someone who's of any different than yourself, right? So
Mhm.
also enforcing that same thing with mental health and understanding that you have to create a place of sensitivity for those who may be struggling. Like, again, it's just everybody that you're around, right? It's not the person with schizophrenia. It's the person that's sitting in front of you or next to you, that is struggling with stress and anxiety and everything else that's going on in their world, right?
Right.
So, and like you're saying, Miss Simone, knowing when to uh, give someone something off of your plate, right? Because when you have so much on your plate, eventually you continue to pile on, something's going to fall off,
Right.
right? So making sure that you create the atmosphere of safety, cultural diversity, including that understanding with mental health and the importance of in being inclusive, all inclusive, and mental health being one of those things, and training your staff, your managers on that.
Yeah, and I mean, not to just pipe down on the managers a lot. I mean, pipe up on the managers a lot, but again, the accountability from the employer perspective. You don't have to be an entry level employee to have this. In relation to this topic, you have some high level executives that don't know how to get it off their plate, or to say,
Mm-hmm.
my plate is too full. You don't want to come across as if you're not skilled enough to manage your workload, or you don't want
Mm-hmm.
anyone to take that as oh, they're not right for this position because they
Mm-hmm.
can't handle these things. So that's all part of that mental portion that is taking place. Is, am I combating myself in not having the conversation because I'm afraid of how I'm going to be perceived as
Right.
not capable of managing my job? And then are they going to look, the market is tight right now, I don't want to present myself as if I'm no longer an asset just because I'm experiencing something with the kids or my husband or my wife or my spouse at home. But I really do need someone to take this off my plate
Mm-hmm.
just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and having that safe space. And sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the industry, that safe space is very, very thin, or it doesn't exist at all. I mean, you have some people, I might call my mom first, like, "Hey, you busy? Because I need you somebody to
Mm-hmm.
look at this Excel document real
Mm-hmm.
quick." And these
Mm-hmm.
formulas are driving me crazy. But I have someone sitting, in the office right next to me that I hear watching something on their phone, but I just don't feel safe enough to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because of particular roles or job titles, that people will hold it in and they will
Mm-hmm.
top a plate on top of a plate full of different
Mm-hmm.
things just out of fear of not having the job security or the respect in their role that they feel like they've worked so hard to get there. It's just a hard week this week. It's just been a tough week this
Mm-hmm.
week. So I think just that training and that education and that awareness on all sides is necessary. And as
Mm-hmm.
we continue to push this topic of mental wellness, like you said, that orientation period, not just what the company is willing to do for you, but what we're expecting out of you as a team member of this company. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to say when your workload is a little heavy
Mm-hmm.
this week, or it's more for you to manage. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a two-way street. It's
I
not just when you sit down in front of your manager, but my manager, I mean, it's not like it's your mom and they can tell, oh, she having a bad day. That may not be. You may not have that type of manager
mm-hmm.
that sees it in your face or
Yeah.
sees it in your tone. So you have to take that initiative sometime from the employee perspective as well. I think we have one more poll question before we dive into our last topic.
Miss Simone, just quickly, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
thank you. And sharing that, I think about creating the atmosphere, right? Because you're saying, and which I think I totally agree, the importance of the employee as well, putting the responsibility on everyone, but also establishing that in your company at the top, this is the atmosphere that we have, and this
Mhm,
is what we
mhm.
do, so that that employee can feel, or that manager can feel comfortable with coming and sharing. So it's all about creating that atmosphere for everyone. And
I
I believe that starts at the top, then and it trickles down to everyone, and everybody begins to understand. It's just like when you're in school, you know which teachers you could cut up in front of, and those you know
mhm.
that they have these expectations and you meet those things. So when you create that atmosphere, that teacher creates that atmosphere in that room, and when you create that atmosphere as a company and your HR and your CEO, CFO, and it just trickles down, and that's so important because you're right. One day I may have 5 things to do, and one day I may have 10 things to do. And so just creating an atmosphere, I think, is the key to the beginning of that process.
Agreed. I agree. Our last poll question is me adding one here at the last minute, but I just wanted to see if our audience has any suggestions. I know the previous questions we kind of listed some things, but from an employee perspective, what do you want to see? What do you want to see out of your employers and out of the HR department or the DEI program? Do you feel like you have the opportunity to participate in those programs at your companies? So if y'all could drop any of those comments or any other questions after you listen to us dive into these different topics. If you have questions that you know, for myself, Shantrice, or Miss Lamisha, that you want us to address, feel free to drop those into the comment section right now too. And we'll jump into this next topic, which is collaborating with leadership and managers, which we were getting in that direction anyway. And then we'll address any kind of questions that we have before we round it off. So, Shantrice, you can lead us on this.
I think I've mentioned it already. Just making sure you obviously get the buy-in from leadership, and just keeping that communication open. I just don't know any other way around it besides being open and making sure that you're not making any moves without the buy-in of others. I know it's so easy for HR to kind of take on tasks and say, okay, this is the project that I got to get done. I'm just going to see it through. But you have to be able to get that buy-in from your other team members in order for it to work effectively. It may work for a short period of time, but for the long run, in order to see results from
Mhm.
where you are now and then the future state, you have to get that buy-in.
I
And I
agree.
think getting that support from employees as well, having those open conversations, whether it's trainings that you do individually or as a group, just getting that buy-in from them as well. What isn't working? What would you like to see differently? And
Mhm.
then trying to also implement those as well. So
I
yeah.
agree. And I think it starts like back with not creating that atmosphere, but in order to create an atmosphere with all of the people that play in the different roles, we have all of these adults that we need to get this feedback from. So if you don't provide the feedback, or if you're not getting feedback, I mean, I can count on hands and toes how many surveys have been sent out and I get one comment back, one person to participate. Well, I
Yeah.
can't buy or create a case to take to upper management if you won't even, fill out the 3-question survey to help me build the case. HR needs the statistics to show this is what our staff needs. This is what they're looking for. The expectations that you have out of your employees, as an employee, you have expectations out of your employer when it comes to certain things. That's all back to when you decide you want to be at this place in the first place. There are things that an employee looks for or that they need these expectations met in order to work here. And I feel like this should be on that list. Is this company transparent when it comes to communication? Do they have an open forum, or is there a link somewhere on a website or with, inner office communication that I know I can, type my questions, comments, or my concerns? Or is it so informal that I gotta hope you want to go to lunch today and I can kind of drop a dime on I'm feeling some type of way without really saying too much? I think that collaboration has to happen on all three parts. Our the employee, the middle level management, as well as, that top little level of leadership, in order to create that atmosphere from the entire employee life cycle. If not, the gaps are going to be seen, and it will show in how many call outs you have, how many people are, actively participating and
Mm.
effectively meeting their deliverables at work. I mean, it's other ways HR can analyze the situation without getting that feedback, but now we're guessing. We're trying to figure out what is the
Right.
reason for these things, the shortfalls that we see happening, versus if you do participate when you see HR is sending surveys out, or, I mean, it can be hard because sometimes the initial thought process is, oh, they care now, but do they? They're not gonna do nothing with the information. I'm not
Mm-mm.
gonna waste my time and fill it out. But we have to, go back to the starting point at some time and say, I'm gonna give my 2 cents. They take it or not, but they're asking, so I'm going to give.
Right.
So I wanted to see if either of you had any more you would like to add before we round today off.
Thank you, Ms. Simone. I want to say that I piggyback off of what you're saying. I think it's so important. Communication is so important, and accepting responsibility, because I can't blame you for anything that I don't contribute to. So if I haven't said anything, then it's not a, then it's, I can't take response. I can't do anything other than, right. So it's important to communicate what your experiences are, creating the atmosphere so that others can feel that they can communicate, and change of thought. Our
Right.
thoughts monitor everything about us. It starts in our head, right. When we have whatever thought we have, then we create that emotion, and then we begin to act on it. So it's so
Mhm.
important to create a different thought pattern within HR, within the whole company, right? It's so important that we begin to challenge those thoughts that people have, and like you're saying, creating communication is so important to even understand the thought, right? The thoughts that people are having. But at least, I love Miss Simone. Just start somewhere. Okay, we didn't initially. Right, we didn't do this. Just if you look at mental health, it's just now becoming the big thing, right? They didn't talk about it years ago.
Right.
So
They did.
understanding that, yeah, things happen, things change. We have to begin to get on board and take responsibility for ourselves in this process. You can't control other things or other people, but what you can control is you. And you have to, like you said, Miss Chantrice, buy in. You have to
Yeah.
be the one to be able to say, I'm going to make the difference because I need this, and I feel others around me may need this as well. So we have to change our thoughts. We have to change our perspective of things, and the way we see things. Very important. And understanding that holistically, your mental health, your physical health, and your spiritual health are some of the most important things that we need to address in order to become whole individuals, to fill in those gaps that we
Right.
have.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Miss Lamisha, for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank
Hope
you. Thank
everybody was
you.
able to gain something from our talk today. In the future, if you have any additional questions, or comments, feel free to still drop them. You can find all of us on LinkedIn, and we can address any questions you have there as well. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy
Thank
the rest
Thank
of your
you.
you.
day.
Have a great
Bye.
day.
Bye bye.